just because you're getting advice from somebody who is even a very good or close friend, it doesn't mean that you have to take that advice or, take it at face value or that it's right for you. It's okay to still make another decision. Like I think it's a good thing to get advice, but sometimes it's not the right advice for you. And even in spite of it being maybe the closest person in your life, it still might not be right for you. And that's okay. That's where you really have to start to check in with yourself. And if you
Yeah.
have faith, check in with God and your prayers. Like meditation has been huge for me. Just getting quiet with myself and connecting more is a really big deal.
Yes. Yes, I would agree.
And welcome back to another episode of Life After Kids with Doctors Brooke and Lynne. I'm Dr. Brooke.
And I'm Dr. Lynne. Welcome,
Thank you,
everyone.
ladies. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, ladies. Before we jump into this hot topic today, I want to remind you that the Life After Kids book, How to Rediscover Yourself and Thrive in Life Beyond Motherhood, is available for pre-order. And if you go to the website, www.lifeafterkids.com/book, you can not only pre-order the book, but we have a bunch of free bonuses for you available there for a limited time. So don't hesitate to check that out. Dr. Lynne, tell them what we're talking about today.
Absolutely. So today we're diving into something that hits every mom the moment that her last kid starts packing up to leave. And that's advice. It seems like it comes in fast and loud, and it's coming from every direction, right? All of the things. And we see it on the social media, oh, get a hobby or get a puppy or go play pickleball. And while some of that is well intended for sure and very helpful, let's be honest, some of it is not right. And so we're diving into a topic which is this is just tells you who we are, right? It's like it's finding the good stuff in the minutia of life, like so that you could squeeze more out of this chapter. And we're talking, like, who talks about this? We're talking about how to tell the difference between advice that is aligned with you and your soul and your dreams and your wants, and advice that might be rooted in someone else's dreams, or even unfortunately their fears or regrets. Like, what is for you?
I love that you gave that spin on, because it is true in this season where, in summer, you're getting ready to send your baby to the littlest to college for the first time. My two have been in college for a year and 2 years, and they'll be going. But I guess I didn't think about it through the lens of you're getting a lot of advice during this time. We're getting a lot of advice in general, but this time specifically for sure. And I think that who else is talking about this, first of all, but us? And does anyone else want to hear? I don't know. But I think it's important because, when you're younger, you're always looking for advice. I remember when the kids were little, like that was all I did was look for advice on how to take care of the kids, how to this, how to that. And it feels like once you get to a certain age, you probably shouldn't need as much advice as you used to. And yet we still need advice. But I think, at least for me, I'm more diligent about sort of filtering out that advice and not necessarily taking everything that I'm told. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think you're right. I think we kind of expect that as we are older, we should know better. But this is if you're feeling this, I know I'm feeling it. It's a very uncertain time. It's a transitional time. And so it is one of those times in your life where you feel a little bit off of your core, of your center, of like knowing what's right, because what's around the corner is not quite evident yet. The summer before they leave, you're really not sure. And sometimes it's the buildup that's worse. And so I do think that people are looking, women, that if you're listening, you're on a podcast listening for advice. You want to hear what we have to say about it. So I do think it's really natural and normal to be seeking that out right now. And I think whether you're seeking it, you're receiving it, because we know people can't help themselves but to tell you what's worked for them. And I think it's just a good time to remind you, when you're listening, that those of you that are listening, that you get to write your own rules and that you can trust your advice. And I think we were going to have a conversation about this through the Enneagram lens, which is one of the helpful tools we use moms to help them to reconnect with themselves and get to know themselves. And the different types are, they're not all created equal when it comes to taking advice. For instance, number 6, which you are, right? Which is the loyalist.
Yep. Yeah, I had mentioned that it's tricky for me because I sixes historically don't they live more in their head unproductively thinking than they do in their gut. So when it comes to like a gut instinct or intuition, that's often lacking. And so because of that, and we can have trouble making decisions, which I think this is, you know, the Enneagram 6, but you don't have to be an Enneagram 6 or even know your number. Many of us struggle with at least part of these things, right?
Yes.
And so if you struggle in those ways and you have trouble with the decisions and you don't feel like you have a good instinct to rely on, you're probably going to rely more heavily on advice from other people. And I found myself doing that through the course of my life, but I'm kind of in a phase now, and I think it's just because of my age and because my kids are getting older and I'm starting to focus on different things, that it's like, no, I don't necessarily want to take advice from other people all the time. I mean, not that I have a few trusted, I have a very small pool of, and when I say small, I mean small, like I can't count them on one hand, of people that I will take advice from. It's not that I don't have people that I love and like to spend time with, but I'm not taking like solid advice on life or raising my kids from very many people. And then beyond that, it's like, what can I do to tap in more to my own instincts and my own and my faith and direction from God, as opposed to taking advice. And I think this phase of life, that can be tricky, because I don't even think I thought about this until you and I just now started talking. But we're kind of in a phase where, like I said earlier, the kids were little, it was a new phase of parenting, and so we're taking all the advice we can get. And we're kind of, when the kids go off to school or when they leave home, you're kind of back at this new phase again. We haven't done it. We don't know how to navigate it. And so it will cause us to want to seek more advice, because there's really no owner's manual. It's
No,
certainly not for parenting. If you want one for yourself, then buy the Life After Kids
I was
book that
just
you
going to
can
say
see
that.
behind
So
me.
remember,
But you know, it's true. I think there's this dance of like, okay, I'm older, I want to rely on myself more. I'm going to be really more discerning on the advice that I'm going to take, and I might need a little more advice because I'm navigating uncharted waters.
yeah. Well, you probably have closed your boundaries down on the advice circle because you know you have to do that, because otherwise if you, it's almost like if you, it's a Pandora's box for you. If you open it up, then all of a sudden it's coming from everywhere. And then you don't know who to listen to. And then you get yourself in a
Yes.
tailspin, right? So I think for those of you that are listening to related to your story about like not feeling that gut intuition, that is a helpful, practical piece of advice to maybe keep it very, very small. I have some other advice,
Yeah.
just some goal guideposts. I think some things to be on the look out, because here's the other side of that coin is advice can be where we taking advice can be where we learn insights about ourselves. It can
Mm.
be trying new things, venturing out. Somebody offers a suggestion you never thought of, and maybe it doesn't work, but you experiment with it and it leads you somewhere else. So I do think we need to stay open to it. But what to know about when to be cautious is, and I love this, I jotted this down, when something feels like a should instead of when something feels like a spark. So when someone suggests something to you and you know, all of a sudden you're like, oh, and it just feels like a little jolt of something that
Mm.
aligns and feels right, then I feel like you should listen to that. When it is something that someone suggests, and you're like, yeah, I should do that. You're right. That would probably be really good for me. Not to say it's bad advice, but that should sound the caution alarm.
Oh, that's so good. And I am notorious for shooting all over myself. We've talked about that before. I think you coined that term, or you got it from someone else. I've heard you say it. I didn't come up with that on my own. But I do definitely shoot all over myself. And I think there's something to be said. If you're thinking in your mind, oh, I should do that, you need to take a step back and think, is that something that you need to do because it aligns with who you are, or because it's going to be good for you, or is it something you think you should do because it's going to make somebody else in your life happy?
Mm,
And sometimes those two go together, but sometimes the things that you think you should do because it's going to benefit somebody else is not the right thing for
Uh,
you, and maybe in the long run not them either. I've had that happen to me so many times in my life, like on an ongoing basis, because I tend to be a people pleaser of like, oh, I should do that. And then if you're hearing from someone else telling you you should do that,
that's so
that
good.
can be a really tricky thing. So I'm
That's
glad
so
you
good.
said that.
Yeah, that's so good. Another place and time to be cautious about advice is when it's coming from someone who may be very well meaning, maybe they know you very well, but they haven't personally done their own emotional work. They haven't kind of worked through their own um, issues, and maybe you don't necessarily look to them as someone that should be giving advice at the stage that you're at or for the level that you need it at. And that might seem obvious, but I do think that's just a criteria in general that people will project their own strengths, their own fears, their own regrets, their own shoulds onto you. And you want to make sure that you're being discerning about who you're taking advice from and making sure that these are actual role models for the emotional work that they've done on themselves.
Yeah, that's very important, and I think you have to think that through, especially if it's an important thing that you're going to advice for. And look, also think about, and maybe you just said this, um, are they living, like, do they have similar core values? Are they living their life? Are they parenting in a way similar to you? Or, if you're going for parenting advice, well, what are their kids doing, and what does that look like?
Yeah.
Like before you jump in and take solicited or unsolicited advice, you should really think all those through, check those boxes before you take that advice.
Yeah, because there's different motivations on when people give advice. And again, not saying that they are ill intentioned, but that advice, you want that to be coming from a place of love and understanding. And you don't want that to be coming from a place of their own fear,
Sure.
right? So they're telling you not to do something, not to make a change, not to pursue a dream. Are they simply projecting their own anxiety or their own fears, or are they really open to you, um, and holding space for you to be able to explore that journey? That makes sense.
And unfortunately, I think if you're getting advice specifically, like this sounds like such a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like a hard way to look at the world, I guess. But unfortunately, there are instances, especially if you're asking for advice on like what you're going to do next or what your goals are, it's not uncommon for people to unfortunately give advice based on like they feel small and they don't want you to get any bigger, because if you do that thing it's going to make them maybe feel worse about themselves. So you have to be really careful there.
I really believe that. And what you can always do, so that's sort of like checking the motivation behind it,
Mm.
and then always give yourself a little bit of a delay. So again, someone gives you some advice, you could, and you don't want to let them down, you don't want to offend them, you could just say, that's really helpful, thank you, I'm going to sit with that and I'm going to see how that feels, like, thank you for sharing that with me. But I think if you're a person who acts impulsively, then I think that you should delay it. You
Mm.
should practice the alternate. And even if that impulsiveness in your past has led you to some good degree of success, try experimenting with just sitting with something first. And on the opposite side of that coin, if you're someone who sits with things and sits with things, try acting impulsively and see how that works. Experiment. And again, nothing is a fail, only if don't try something that really has aligned with you and is something that is coming from love and is something that can lead you to a great transformation, even if the actual outcome doesn't look exactly as you hoped.
Sure. And even if you decide to act on advice, act on it or not act on it, um and say you do, and either way you act on it or you don't, and it plays out in a negative way, that doesn't mean it's a failure. Because you've learned something. You're going to learn something anytime you take an action, right? Sometimes it's a good lesson, sometimes not so great, but in the long run you need to learn those lessons anyway.
Yeah, what is it
So
they say? Only on your deathbed you don't regret. Um, you don't typically have regrets. only the things that you didn't try,
Yeah, that you left undone.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So I
For
think a
sure.
lot about that at this stage in my life. So here's a good tip. We have a really good friend. I talk about him a lot on the podcast. I doubt he's listening, but if he did, he'd probably hear himself sprinkled throughout several of our episodes because he's just one of those people that makes a lasting impression, not just because of who they are, but because of the habits that
Mm-hmm.
and the discipline and the strict standards that they have for themselves and for their family. So he's lived his life in that way. But every year he invites my husband. My husband is on his personal board of advisors, and he invites these guys, and I think there's women there as well, and there's probably 10 to 12 of them that have been with him on his journey throughout his life, that he respects, that he like ultimately just looks up to, and he invites these people to a restaurant, treats them to a meal, and he takes them through his past year and his successes, wins, learns, the good, bad, and ugly, basically. And then people weigh in on particular obstacles that he's having or challenges or places he wants to grow. And he trusts these people. So he brings them together in a room to give them advice. And I think we could copy that in when it comes to advice in this stage of life, right? So, you mentioned you have a very small circle. Create your own personal board of advisors. Maybe you don't bring them together in a restaurant, or maybe you do, because I kind of love that idea. But identify them, stick to that little group. And whether it's a call that you do with your friends or this group of people, and you share a challenge or whatever, but identify these people that you respect. And then, even if in their absence, you could kind of like ask, like, well, what would they say? Right?
Mm.
What would these people that I trust and I've asked and leaned on before, what would they say in this situation?
Yeah, that's really good. And I think too, on the flip side of that, if you constantly, especially if you have like one or two people that you go to a lot for advice, or to talk through things, like make sure that you're prepared to reciprocate that as well when necessary. Like I think it's easy to fall into, especially if you're in a rough patch or you're going through some things, to just ask, and take, and not remember to give back too. So just keep that in mind as well. That's an important,
Mm-hmm.
I think, piece of this. you know?
That's great. That's great. This is going to be putting you on the spot, and it doesn't have to be something specific, but I always love sharing something personal here. Can you think of any like really bad advice that you've gotten
Oh, bad advice. Oh my gosh.
and what you did instead? I mean, I'll start and give you a chance to
Yeah,
think.
give me a second because I didn't even think about it.
I won't say it's what it was exactly or like pin it down to the actual scenario, but I would say in general, bad advice that I've gotten is from people who don't understand my particular strengths filter. Like they're telling me something,
Mm.
projecting what their strengths are without understanding mine. So, oh, maybe you should like, you know, revolving around speaking from a stage, or you should take this and do this with it, that would actually come from a place that would cause me to come from a place of like outside of my genius and would actually require more energy. It would be very energy inefficient for me. So that's a high level thing. It's just really important. It's just really important that you know your strengths, you can name them, you claim them, you understand them, so that when advice does come in, that's what you filter it through, because you definitely listen, life right now is all about energy management. I mean,
Mm.
life back in the day when we had toddlers was about that too, but even more so because there's only so much energy to go around. It's a finite resource, and we are old enough and smart enough to be able to know each other and know ourselves better so that we can maximize and be super efficient with that energy, right? Because that's where we're going to get the biggest bang for our buck and have the most left over to go do the amazing things that we're going to remember on our deathbed.
Yeah.
So you want to be really smart with your energy, and what you're spending. And filtering things through your strengths is the best way to do that, because your genius, your zone of genius is energy producing, and you're going to get so much energy back from doing the things that you're already great at and amazing at. And you'll have energy, ample energy left over to go do more.
So good.
Do more.
Yeah, and I think you're bringing up a good point there, because on the flip side of that, if you're taking advice, whoever you're taking advice from, especially if it's like life advice or things that you want to do, it's very helpful if that person knows you in an intimate enough way to kind of know what your strengths are, right? Because if they don't, they're only giving you advice on a half the piece of the puzzle. And very often people tend to give advice through the lens of themselves, like what's best for them, and they don't take into account like what's best for you. And a really simple example of this, which is like so silly, like how many, well, you don't like to shop with me, but we've been shopping many times where you're usually in and out of the store because I take too much time to decide. But there's been many times that I've said to you, and I'm sure you recall, like, what do you think of this on me? Not do you like it for you, but do you like it for me, right? Because even that is like, we have very different tastes. So you could give me advice on like, I would never wear that, but you know that, oh, it looks good on you and it's like your style. So yeah, it looks great. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do. I'm just chuckling because I don't think I'm in your small circle of people that take advice from. Whenever we've been shopping, I'll tell you, and you're like, okay.
And then I get it anyway.
Yeah.
That's it. It's like when you're at the restaurant and you ask the waitress, like, what do you think of this dish? What do you think I should get? What's your favorite? And they tell you, and then you feel bad because you don't want to get it.
We all have the steak frites.
But my point is, people do want to tend to give advice based through the lens of their own life. And sometimes that's not right for you. So keep that in mind too.
Most times it's not right for you. So
right.
I think that's a really great place to come back to be confident in the decision, is because you filtered it through your values, you filtered it through your strengths, and then those things are so deeply tied to your authentic self and your authentic dreams that how can you go wrong, right? Even
right.
if it's a quote unquote paper on failure, it was the right move for you.
Yeah. I want to go because I thought of something, and I think this is important to touch on when you asked me when in a time that I've had bad advice.
Yes.
I just happened to come to mind. I've had bad advice from doctors that I've worked with. And I think that's a really important thing to touch on, because I don't think that we advocate for ourselves enough and for our health. And I think, like, if you're listening, you need to know that, like, nobody knows your body better than you, and you have agency over your body. And just because they have a title or a doctor before their name or letters after their name, or you're their patient, does not mean that they get to push you around, or, you know, if something doesn't feel right in your body. And it took me a solid, like, over 2 years to realize that I was getting bad advice from this doctor. And I was so far down a rabbit hole that I couldn't even, and I was even getting advice from other people, like my husband, like, what's going on here? You need to back off of this. And I just couldn't see it. So I think you have to, there's a case of where, like, when it's life advice, you're checking in with your core values and your own goals and what you want. In a situation where you might be getting advice on your health, and it could come from a doctor or someone else, pay really close attention to how you're feeling in your body. Because on paper it might look good, or what they're telling you might look good, but if it doesn't feel good to you and it's not giving you the results that you want, it might be time to jump ship and go elsewhere.
I love that. And even like sooner or early on in the decision. So if we're just talking about an emotional decision, like not necessarily medical advice, but if somebody's passing something by you for a decision that you're trying to make, I love that. Do the body test, because you will feel it in your body, right? You'll have a somatic response. Your body will know, like, does that advice make you feel light? Does it make you feel hopeful? Or do you tense? Do you feel resistance? Right. And so I think your body always knows. I think that's really, really a cool thing about knowing, knowing who we are at this stage, and then also knowing our bodies and being in these bodies for, 40 plus years, presumably, that we can pay attention when it speaks to us, especially in these instances.
Yeah, and you do very often get a visceral response on things, either because it's a good thing or because it's a not so good thing. And I have found, this is a little bit separate, but what I have found and what has been brought to my attention by somebody that I'm close to that I always want to say that I don't have this instinct or like an intuition, but I actually, when something comes up very, very often, I have a reaction like, I want to do this or I should do this. And instead of just trusting that, I back away from it and then I have to sit with it and think about it to the point of like, well, like I knew it was right from the start, but I have to stop and think about it and give myself so many other options that by the time I get to the other side, I don't know what's right. And so for me, it's like kind of like stepping back, leaning into that a little bit more. And I think you touched on that earlier is like maybe if you take too long to make a decision, maybe you need to be a little more impulsive or just jump on what you feel right in that moment. I
Yeah.
do think there's something to be said for that. And I think that for somebody like me who hedges on decisions or doesn't feel like they have an intuition, the more that you practice that and see how that plays out in your life, I think the better you become at it.
Yeah. And we always say words matter. And I've heard you say that before, and perhaps you could reframe that somehow and
Right.
say, I'm learning to trust my gut.
Yeah.
I'm still learning to trust my gut instead of saying, I'm a 6 and I don't have that naturally or something. That's
Yep.
how we're reframing, and the power of that, because it really just flips things ever so slightly, but it's going to be more, give it more of a positive spin, and it's a development. You can trust that you're on the road by saying it that way towards getting better. All
Yep.
right. So let's recap some of these. Our topic is advice, when to take it, when not to, and how to have that confidence to listen to yourself and trust your gut. If we recap what we talked about, first tip is, check that energy behind it. Is it coming from love or is it coming from fear? Whoever's giving this to you, check your motivations and make sure. We talked a lot about projecting and how other people will project either their strengths or their lack of strength in something, or
Mm-hmm.
their fear or their anxiety onto you. Make sure that you're checking that at the door, right? We just talked about doing the body test, feeling it in your body. If that advice gives you, like, sends the little hairs on your, gives you the goosebumps, that's something to pay attention to. Versus if if your chest tightens and you can't breathe all of a sudden, that too is also something to pay attention to. And then give yourself the gift of delay. So, what we spoke about is if you're someone who really jumps into things and is pretty impulsive, maybe give yourself a break this time. Sit back, let it sit in your body. Take some time with it, mull it over, let it sit. And on the other side of the coin, if you aren't someone who likes to jump in, if you sometimes hedge yourself and hesitate a little too much and people need to push you in, this is maybe your time to experiment with being more impulsive and taking action, trusting that intuition, trusting that gut. And at the end of the day, it's not a failure especially if you've checked in with the other things, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
Yeah.
I think really importantly is like just because you're getting advice from somebody who is even a very good or close friend, it doesn't mean that you have to take that advice or, take it at face value or that it's right for you. It's okay to still make another decision. Like I think it's a good thing to get advice, but sometimes it's not the right advice for you. And even in spite of it being maybe the closest person in your life, it still might not be right for you. And that's okay. That's where you really have to start to check in with yourself. And if you
Yeah.
have faith, check in with God and your prayers. Like meditation has been huge for me. Just getting quiet with myself and connecting more is a really big deal.
Yes, yes, I would agree wholeheartedly. So, all of these topics usually come out of something that we've personally experienced. I mean, we take that very seriously. Do you remember where this came out of? Did this come out of the doctor advice, perhaps, that you got?
I don't know. We were both trying to even because you and I take
This
we
topic.
both come to the table with topics,
Mhm.
and I don't even think either of us could remember who came up with this topic. It sounds like a Brooke topic, but I don't know.
The content.
I'm not sure exactly because I think that was from a couple of months ago, and time goes so fast, and I've
Yeah.
got like 50-year
Either
old
way,
menopause brain. So,
it was a good chance for me to clarify my thoughts on that, for me to
mm-hmm.
check my personal board of directors or advisors, for me to check um, on the signs and the green flags, right? That I should be listening to before all the advice comes, because if you are in that transition phase, you are probably going to get bombarded with a lot of advice, and it's okay to just breathe, give yourself some pause or not.
Yeah.
And just to make sure that it is actually something that is authentically ringing through to that place you're supposed to be, right? And connecting to that body, connecting to your mind, connecting to your heart.
Mm-hmm.
All three of those areas play a role in getting you to the place that you're dreaming of. So you want to make sure you're checking in on all of those places.
Yeah, it's so important, especially now in this phase of life and as the kids are growing up and leaving home. And I think also just because social media is so in our face all day long with advice on everything,
Yes.
from your health to parenting to what you should wear to what you should eat to it's so everybody's opinion and advice is out there. So it becomes more important, I think, to kind of put the noise aside and sit and be quiet with yourself
Yeah.
sometime and spend time with an exercise like your core values and know yourself and know what you want. And one other thing I would caution about before we wrap up, if you are sending a child to college for the first time, as I know many of you probably are, be careful too. Like we said, you're taking advice from people that you know, and you know how they're parenting and what they're doing in your life is one thing. But like, I was shocked and overwhelmed when I got onto the college like parents Facebook pages, and they're very helpful for very many things. I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but there's also a lot of noise on there and a lot of advice, and like to just be careful, because remember that kind of thing, like you're getting information on things you should do with your kid or not do or whatever it is, and you don't even know that person or what the relationship with
Yeah.
their kid's life. So just be careful and always check in with yourself and
Yeah.
maybe your spouse or a trusted person before you jump.
You want to cut through the noise for sure. And I think maybe this topic came out of the fact that we're both highly aware that this next phase is something that is unwritten and it is unscripted. And for so many years, following either whether you got married and you had the kids, and it's like you're following the formula, right? And you sort of know what to do, even though you're figuring it out every day. And then along comes this transition where the beauty of it, there's so much opportunity ahead of you. The downside, there's so much opportunity ahead of you for you. And knowing what to do and what's best and what's right can feel like I just wish somebody would tell me what to do,
Yeah.
what to do next. And, you know, nobody can, because you really don't need to be told what to do. You just need to know who you are,
Mm-hmm.
which is what we talk about so much, what the book is about. And, just keep coming back to that, and give yourself a little space. Like you said, do the work, learn those things like your values, and then those decisions become more self-evident following that.
So good. So true. I think that's a great place to wrap, unless you have anything else you want to.
No, this was fun.
That
I
was a
wasn't
mic
sure where
drop.
this was going to go, but I liked it.
I very often we're not sure where it's going to go, but I think it it went to a good place. I feel good about this.
Yeah.
Um, Ladies, thank you so much for joining us today. It's always a pleasure to have you with us. Make sure you're following us on all the places: Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. You can watch us on YouTube if you prefer that over listening. Again, the book is at www.lifeafterkids.com. You can also find all of our free resources there, including the blog. I hope you have a great day and an even better week, and be careful who you get your advice from.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, you're not here to follow someone else's map. You're here to make your own trail.
Ooh, I like that. That's been a long time coming.
That one I got a little help with, but I liked it. So I shared it.
It's great. All right, ladies, have a good one.